Hey everybody, Dave here. Hope you're having an awesome day. So when I was in California, I didn't get to do a lot of fun things because we were just working on remodel, but I did get to go to Kobe Swap Meet with Toys on Tap, and we had a great time. We just talked toys, and we were nerding out and hunting for toys. And while I was there, I found this guy. Now, I've been looking for a figure like this for a while that's just a little bit overweight because I've got this Boba Fett, and I've had this idea for quite a while, and I just haven't found the right figure. And now that I found it, let's go make ourselves a Boba Fat. Come on, let's do it. Alright, so this is a Tazz WWE wrestling figure. I got him at the Kobe Swap Meet. Here's a Boba Fett, found this at a yard sale. I originally thought this head would work, but I ended up switching that up a little bit later. But first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and take off this coat. The coat is kind of sticky and gross, so I'm just going to throw it away. So I'm just cutting it down the middle, and then the sides just pop right off. Now for the fun part. Let's take some hot water, put this in the microwave for about a minute and a half. I'll soak him in there for about another minute, and then once you take him out, make sure to use a towel because it can be really hot. So let the water drain off, and then the head just pops right off. It softens up the plastic, so pretty easy way to get the head off there. And now I'm just taking a knife and kind of cleaning up some of these little pieces. There was a broken tie. I'm going to put some armor on him, so I'm using the Dremel just to clean up some of this area on the chest, his collar area, just a little bit, the pocket, just so I can put the sculpting on there a little bit easier. Just sanding it down so it's a little bit cleaner. And then I sketched out the pattern, but I was thinking originally I might use polystyrene to make his armor plating. So I went ahead and I cut that. And with polystyrene, you can just kind of score your shape, snap it. And it wasn't very flexible, and it was going to stick off the body too much. So I thought, well, maybe I'll pull out the Magic Sculpt. Now, this project actually ended up being more of a sculpture than anything. So here I am just rolling out some Magic Sculpt, kind of to spread out the size, and I cut out that piece in polystyrene, and this works out pretty nice because it's going to just end up being a template for me that I can flip to the left and right side. So I'm just taking my knife and just carefully cutting along the edge as a template, and then I'll lay this on the chest. Now, because it is so pliable still, it's a little misshapen, but that's okay, because what I'll do is I'll take the edge of a knife and I can actually reshape this. I can actually cut it. With Magic Sculpt, if you wet it, you can smooth everything out really nice, get all the fingerprints out. So here I am using that same template, and I'm just kind of pressing in the Magic Sculpt to get that little center little piece that goes between the two chest pieces there. And again, this isn't perfect, but I'll like trim it down, get it to look nice. Now I thought for his little turtleneck, I thought maybe I'll roll out this, and I thought, wait, no, it doesn't need to go there. It needs to go on the actual neck portion. So I ripped that off, put it back up on the neck portion, and then just took a couple of sculpting tools and just made the little wrinkles in the fabric that goes up under his helmet. So that's turned out pretty cool. I'll put on the other chest piece there, and then once I have that on, I need to figure out the stomach portion. So I made a little template, and I just did half and half, and I flipped it, and I cut it out. And once I get this peeled up, I'll put it on, and it did kind of stretch out a little bit, so it's not perfect. But again, I can take my knife, and I can cut and trim and get everything lined up, just kind of more eyeballing it. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is just cleaning that up, and that's working out pretty nice. So I'm going to go up to the shoulders and the back piece, kind of do the same thing. You can see I've wet that and smoothed it out, and I'm just kind of trimming off and getting everything lined up. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Now on his belt, he has a bunch of little pouches, so I just cut about 8 pieces, and I'm taking a sculpting tool, and I'm just making it look as though there's a little flap coming over as if it was a pouch. His hand, just putting some Magic Sculpt. I'm going to try and make it look more like a glove. And this is the head that I originally showed, but it's a little bit more stylized, and so it's a little small and a little squatty and short. So I have this Bondi model kit that I found at Target on clearance for like $7. And the head is a little bit larger and a little bit nicer, and I think that's going to work out pretty nice. So I'm going to use a magnetic system. That way I can swivel the head left and right, take the head off if I want. This will actually be easier for me to paint it later on as well. So I think that'll work out pretty nice. In order to do this, I super glued the one magnet in, and here I'm using hot glue just in case if I ever want to use this model head to finish the Bondi model kit itself. But I'm just kind of pressing that on, getting it lined up. For the belt, under his belt, he has kind of this roping. So I have this twine and I'm wrapping it around. I kind of just super glued it down, and I will paint this all out later. So I'm not too worried about the red and white stripes, but got a little strap of leather. I'm going to wrap and glue that on, and then the little pouches will just glue onto that. I'm actually keeping this where the torso still swivels, so I've got full articulation on this thing. Now for the wrist, I'm trying to figure out what to do for the gauntlet. And I had this dollar store Final Faction piece, and I thought maybe if I cut this up, I could get that to work. I just couldn't get to work. I messed around with it for quite a while, and it just wasn't looking right. So I thought, okay, if I take a little knife and trim down the arm, the gauntlet has kind of this taper to it, and I think if I just do some Magic Sculpt, I can actually sculpt this out. So again, this becomes like a full-blown sculpture project, and it actually worked out pretty nice. Here I am just taking some Magic Sculpt, wrapping it around. It looks a little wonky now, but I took some time and straightened everything out, took the knife, cleaned things up, and started building out the arm. It's looking pretty cool. Now, for the rocket on the gauntlet, I was thinking maybe I could use this little coffee stirring straw, but that was too big. Wasn't really liking that. So I thought maybe I'll just sculpt it with Magic Sculpt, and that just looks weird. So I'm going to get rid of that because I don't like that at all. So I ended up taking this just clear plastic tubing, and it fits nice for the body. And then I took some wooden dowel, and I put it in a pencil sharpener and sharpened up the tip. And I just took my blade, and I cut that off, and I'll glue that onto the tip of the little plastic dowel that I had. And for the back, I'm going to do the same thing, except I just sharpened it halfway, and I'll snip this off, I'll glue that back piece on, and I think that gives me a pretty decent looking rocket. I know it's not screen accurate, but again, this is kind of an interpretation. But overall, it's looking pretty cool. I like it. Now you can see I've got some knee pads on there. On his shin, he's got these little pockets. So I used some guitar string for his tools, just sculpting out the little seam with a sculpting tool there. And putting on like a little flap on the pocket. I just rolled a piece of Magic Sculpt really thin. And it feels like it's giving it some nice dimension, and it's really starting to fill out quite a bit. So here it is, kind of pretty much finished. I've got the gauntlets, all the pockets. I've got his shoulder pieces there on the table. I'll paint those and glue those on later. I think I'm going to go ahead and prime this thing. So I primed it, and then I sprayed it. After I primed it, I sprayed it a light gray. I'm going to paint out the body green and yellow with these Citadel paints. Now, these are airbrush paints, so they're really, really thin. So I'm going to have to layer these multiple times. Fortunately for the yellow, I did have a regular standard pot of the Citadel yellow, so I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and brush on the yellow. So I got the knee pads done, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the shoulder armor, just paint a couple coats on that. And this is about 4 coats of that green, maybe even 5 coats of that green, so I did eventually get it to work. For the gauntlets, I actually just mixed up 3 different browns, like reddish brown and a little bit darker brown. Got that looking where I wanted it to be. Again, I just kind of eyeballed it. The pouches were a little bit darker leather, so again, I mixed up a brown and a black just to darken that up. The little pouches on the side had a tan. The rocket on the gauntlet has a little gold, black, and silver, so I painted that out. And his arms and his pants are a little bit darker gray, so I painted the entire thing with this little bit darker gray, but it ended up being almost too dark. So I went ahead and got a little craft paint that was a lighter gray, and I painted over all the dark gray. And it ended up giving a nice, subtle shade that I think it landed right where I wanted it to be. Then I used that darker gray on those shoes. That way the shoes were a little bit darker and stood out from the pants. So that's kind of 1 foot finished. I still have to work on the other one. You can see I even put little spikes on the shoe there. Just taking some red Citadel paint and kind of painting out the details, a little bit of silver on that center chest piece. And these are just little tiny details that are kind of adding that finishing touch. So taking some silver paint, doing the chipping on it, and I'm looking at some source photos from the movie just so I can get it kind of similar. Doing some chipping on the gauntlets there, gluing on his little shoulder pads. I did utilize the decals from the model kit, so that worked out pretty nice. And I actually used the rocket from the model kit. And this thing is looking really cool, so I think we're going to wrap this one up and call it a day. Okay, that was a really, really fun build. If you guys follow my channel, you'll know the last two builds have been a lot of just struggles and things not working properly, but this one came together pretty easily, and in the end, it turned out really nice. It was kind of how I envisioned in my mind. And I think it's kind of funny. It's like hashtag dadcore. You know, he's packed on a few dad pounds and, you know, he's just living a good life. So, and I can relate. No, I really enjoyed this, and I really like that it still articulates and has full movement, and the paint job turned out pretty cool. So, yeah, let's do some turnout shots of this thing. And as always, it's a great day to be a toy nerd. Have a great one.